Hello there and welcome back to another review. Today we're going to be having a look at the second original Godzilla movie, which I've got to try and get through all of these, but we're still going in order, so we'll start as we mean to go on. So Godzilla raids again today. Made in 1955, this film wasn't, the original director Honda doesn't return this time. With this film, where the first one was very much sort of an anti-nuclear weapons sort of analogy for like the cost of what using like nuclear weapons does, and what can happen. This film is very much just a straight up monster movie. It is straight, whereas the first film there's a lot of analogies that can be made and there's a message that comes across with the first movie. This one, it is just straight up just monster mash, that kind of thing. Due to the success of the original Godzilla, a second film was always going to happen. There was always going to be a sequel to Godzilla because it was obviously quite successful. And when something is successful, of course, you follow it up and follow it up and follow it up until, you make as much money as possible. So yeah, Godzilla raids again today. It's the first time with this film that you actually do get to see Godzilla go against another monster, which is something that will become a trait of like future Godzilla movies. Obviously, going against different enemies, different monsters that come Godzilla's way. This was the first time it sort of happened, because in the first film it was just basically Godzilla on his own. This one, as I say, you do get another monster, something, as I say, that would become a bit of a trait. In Anguirus, we see is here. This is the monster we get in this movie. This is also a different Godzilla in this film, as the first one was killed, as we know in the first movie. The musical themes and scores in the first film are also not present here. But opting for a more subtle soundtrack. I mean, the original soundtrack to the original Godzilla movie is quite dramatic, and it does stick in your head, that Godzilla theme. Here, the music is a bit more, as I say, subtle in the scenes. It's not so obvious. There is still music in the movie, of course. There is still music, but it's not as sort of memorable, I would say, as the first film. So, it's, like I say, it's more of a subtle soundtrack. The US title for this film was Gigantus the Fire Monster, but here I'll be looking at the original Japanese version, the way it was intended. As I try to do with a lot of movies, I try to always just watch them the way the original creators intended them to do, intended for the film to be seen, and before sort of other markets like sort of butcher it and change things and add different things that need like different scenes or different characters. But I always like to look at the original movie, and that's what we'll be looking at here today. So Motoyoshi Oda was the director here, and many believe this film was made just to keep the momentum going of a big hit. I mean, and why not? It's still what studios do nowadays. Once something is successful, as I say, they just keep doing them until basically people lose interest. So Godzilla raids again. I mean, there was a new Godzilla suit used for this one, allowing for more freedom for the performers inside the suit. And if some of the battles do look sped up or faster speed than usual, that is because I do know, because some of the fight scenes they just look a bit sped up. Like the speed just doesn't seem right. So I think it's because there was an error with the camera rolling at a different speed to what it should have been, like behind the scenes. I think the camera was running at the wrong speed, so that's why sort of the fights look a little bit sped up. They look a little bit not quite at the right pace they should be. Again, this film is shot in black and white, and whilst maybe not as classic as the first film, there's still a lot of fun to be had with this one. As many mentioned, it can be seen as a straight up monster movie, which set many traits that subsequent Godzilla films would follow. So the film opens with like a plane guiding a ship who worked for like this fishing company to a school of fish. At the same time, another pilot, Kobayashi, finds engine trouble and running out of fuel, so he goes to help him on Iwato Island, I believe. I'm not obviously where you're watching it subtitles, some of the pronunciations you're not entirely sure how they are, but if we go with that, whilst they're chatting, they see Godzilla fighting another monster. We learn that after they get off the island, this is a different Godzilla. This is another Godzilla, as the bomb testing has obviously awakened another one, as well as another monster, as I mentioned earlier, called Anguirus. Then we're shown footage of the first film, which is just killing time here, really. It's just sort of like reminding you of what happened in the first film and just like what took place. So they're just killing time here. It doesn't really serve much purpose other than to just sort of show you, what happened in the first film. They suggest that Godzilla is sensitive to light, so they issue a blackout and send out planes to find Godzilla and use flares to sort of lure him away. They find him heading for the Key Channel, which is a valuable fishing grounds. We then see this people dancing ballroom style. I mean, it's so funny, like Godzilla's on the rampage and these people are just like, just having a nice dance. They're not too worried about it. They're just killing time, doing a bit of ballroom dancing. Then Godzilla changes course and heads for Osaka Bay. So I'm just sort of remembering this off the top of my head. So you'll have to bear with me if I get some plot points wrong or it doesn't sound, or I've just missed something out here and there. But I'm just recollecting this just as my mind can remember it. A pilot goes to meet his boss at their cannery and leaves his girlfriend at her house. At the same time, a prison escort truck gets overpowered by the criminals inside. Bit of a chase happens and the prisoners end up crashing into an oil refinery, which is always handy. They crash, these dumb criminals, they've escaped and they just, for some reason, just decide to crash into an oil refinery. They just wasn't looking where they were going. Mistakes happen and all that. But yeah, they crash into that. Go figure. So last thing you want, especially when you've got a monster going around, that, they crash into this thing. So they create a massive explosion and Godzilla's he's drawn to light. So the explosion draws in Godzilla and Anguirus, who was lured in by the flares that were also being used to distract Godzilla. So they've sort of really shot themselves in the foot here with this. Not the best plan in the world. The two get into a big brawl with some real nice destruction here, with a few remaining prisoners trying to avoid the destruction. There's some good model work here with the miniatures, and it really does, some of the scenes here with this brawl, it really does look good. Love seeing them pitted against a few historical Japanese buildings and castles. I think that was something that really stood out for me, rather than sort of just being in skyscrapers and buildings, just modern buildings around them. It's nice when they're just sort of in the background there's models and structures of I say ancient Japanese castles and temples, and it just really gives it that pure proper Japanese flavour that really does work. Godzilla wins the battle with his classic atomic breath and also biting his necks. So he just absolutely bites into Anguirus' neck, and then he goes. He just I've done, I've conquered the beast. I'm off. After this, they move their fishing operation to Hokkaido, where it is snowing and cold, which it gives the film a bit more scope rather than just being sort of, this is where we are all the time. When they move their fishing operation and everything, and it's snowing, it just gives the film a different flavour. It just makes it a bit more, it just gives it a different look and a different feel, which I think does work, and it helps to mix the film up a little bit. So they carry on with business as usual, even at one point Kobayashi dropping a note from his moving plane onto one of the trawlers saying, "I hope it's a big haul." I mean, he's flying around, he drops a note from his plane onto this frigate, this shipping container. I mean, how accurate he needed to be is beyond measure. He just he manages to drop it from his plane. God knows how many feet, high feet up he was. Just drops it, lands it, they catch it, no problem. So, that is some accuracy. That is some proper accuracy right there. I will say there doesn't seem to be much urgency in this film. That's one thing I did notice. Whereas the first film, there seems to be sort of a mass panic going on. With this film, there doesn't seem to be as much sort of in the way of, okay, there's a giant monster terrorizing us. There just doesn't seem to be that instant panic in regards to sort of a monster invasion. The sense of panic and destruction, this is the end, we are going to die. It's not very evident here, probably because you don't see overly that much of the general masses and the overall public. There's not many shots from what I can remember of people running, screaming, sort of as there was in the first one. There are still shots of that, but it's sort of downplayed because you're sort of just focusing on this small group of characters, which does work as well. As I say, you really don't get the sense of a mass city under threat here as much as you do in the first movie. There still is that threat and that panic, but it's just not as like I say, as evident here as in the first film. Then we have like this company dinner segment. Kobayashi character gets known as Mr. Groom, as he keeps saying he has someone he is interested in. This is all just, like I say, just a little love thing they have going on to sort of counteract with the the whole monster thing. Then he gets informed one of their trawlers has sunk, so our lead gets a plane and goes to investigate, thinking it might be Godzilla. Kobayashi goes to help, but before he leaves, he asks the girlfriend, I think her name's Hidemi, I think that's how you say it. He asks her, what do girls like? Because he's like, I found somebody. What do girls like? I need to know what to buy them. What can I get? And he leaves behind this book that he takes with him, and it's a photo of her. So he's pining for her. She was unaware. So at this point probably something's gonna happen. You probably know, because he's a sweet guy. She finds out that he likes him accidentally. So you probably know he's not gonna survive the end of the film. You already know already that that's not gonna happen. So it gives the film like a little bit of soul here. So we do care for the character, and he never got to tell her his feelings. So there is that. I could see what they were trying to do with that, but it just seems a little bit sort of sometimes like a little bit crammed in at the end. It just seems like a little bit sort of something that really didn't need to be there, but it helps, I suppose. So they go to Kamiko Island. They find Godzilla and have to wait for defense forces. So he thinks, we'll just attack Godzilla head on. So they go to this island. You got Godzilla there. They've got to wait for defense forces and people that can actually do some damage to Godzilla with weapons and that. And Kobayashi just decides to, do you know what? I'm just going to go at him. I've got, I'm in a little biplane. I'm just going to go at him, take him down. So they, I just don't understand. I mean, with no weapons on his plane, he gets taken out by Godzilla's atomic breath and crashes into a mountain, which helps them realise they should cause an avalanche. I mean, so there was some payoff in his sort of kamikaze attitude, but I really, if you watch that scene, I mean, from my eyes, I didn't know what he was trying to do. I didn't know what the plan was here, but he just sort of goes at Godzilla at full speed, crashes into a mountain, and then they think, right, let's cause an avalanche. So some nice shots here of the planes crashing. I mean, it's probably the best scene of the whole film is right at the end, where you've got all these different planes crashing and Godzilla's, so they're trying to cause this avalanche. Them swooping in on Godzilla, explosions in snow. It all looks really good. It's all really cool stuff at the end, and it's sort of what you've been waiting to see. But again, credit to the filmmakers for just mix, like I said, with the setting of snow, rather than just doing it in the city, just doing it at a random, construction site or just buildings. They just make it a little bit different, just to give the film visually just a different look, and just to put Godzilla and just the way they get rid of him causing an avalanche just different, just mixing it up a little bit. It's, as I say, very easy the best moment of the film, with some great miniature work at the end. They box him in with some flaming barrels as well, and they end up burying him, and our lead says, it was for you, Kobayashi, and I think, and that's sort of the end of the film, really. I do know that, excuse me, the ice they used in some of the miniature shots, so I think they borrowed it. I think the filmmakers borrowed it from a nearby ice ring, I believe. I think that's what they used. But yeah, it's still an enjoyable film. It's still an enjoyable kaiju movie. I mean, bearing in mind this was only the second Godzilla film. For me personally, at this point, I still prefer the first film. I know there's a lot of people that do like this movie. It's just not as, what I would say, as classic as the first one. It's just not as instantly sort of memorable. There are still some good bits in it, and as I say, the when they were fighting against the ancient Japanese castles, and the ending within the snow, and the planes swooping down, and when they're attacking Godzilla, it really does look good. And there's, like I say, some fantastic miniature work in this. It's just not quite as memorable and as classic and as thought-provoking, say, as what the first film was, because I think the first film, as mentioned earlier, just had a bit more. There was a bit more behind it. There was a bit more meaning to it. Whereas this is just, I mean, obviously I know after this, that's what they did become. They were just monster movies of, just giant creatures, destroying everything in sight. But it's just compared to the first film. The first film, is still regarded to be a classic, and it, rightly so. But this is still a very good movie. And if you're into Godzillas, you're into monster movies, check it out, because you will have a lot of fun here. It's just little things that just don't make it quite as sort of as memorable and as classic as the first one, but it's still good. It's still a Godzilla movie. So I'll wrap it up there. I'll just say thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I will try my best to get through all of the Godzilla movies on this humongous box set from Criterion, but we'll see how we go. Okay, see you soon.